Well, actually into today's video, we're going to have a look at weather for the next 8 to 10 days in today's video. This one takes us to the end of November, to the last day of the month, and it looks as though we're keeping sort of the east-west battle going, to be honest. High pressure remains close to Scandinavia, I think, over the next week to 10 days, ridging through there at times. The Atlantic remains in quite a buoyant phase, so really as we've had it through most of November, to be honest, with this battle going on between the ridge to the northeast and the east, the trough to the west and the southwest. It's interesting in terms of the bigger picture. It's not that interesting in terms of the actual weather it's producing at the moment, but as long as that high pressure stays up over Scandinavia, we've got to keep an eye on what's happening. There's newspaper headlines today about a big freeze occurring in the next week or 10 days or so. I'm not seeing much evidence of that this morning, but as I say, we've got to keep an eye on things with that high pressure up over Scandinavia. If things start to align just right, we could start to bring in some colder air from the east, but it's just getting things to slot into place. That's what's taking all of the time. Before I get on with that though, just to say about the ads. Now there's a video ad sitting above the weather video here on my homepage. Hit play on the video ad. You'll be able to support GavsWebBiz.com. Thanks so much for doing that. There's also links to articles sitting underneath the weather video. Have a browse through the widget. If there's any article that you're interested in, just click through and you'll be able to go off and read those articles. Gav Shop is open, so if you've got any Christmas shopping to do at Amazon between now and Christmas, just click through the Amazon banners in Gav Shop. That'll take you off to Amazon. You'll be able to do your Christmas shopping there as normal, but because you've gone through from GavsWebBiz to Amazon, we'll get a revenue fee on the things that you're purchasing. Thanks very much for doing that. So we've got the 500 millibar height anomaly charts here with the ECMWF on the left, the GFS over on the right. These are the mean flow charts for the next 8 to 10 days. Now blue is extrapolating to low pressure, orange and red extrapolating to high pressure. We notice that on both of these charts we've got deep trough again through the states over the next week, 10 days. As I say, this is taking us to the end of November, now will be taking us to the last day of the month. So we've got this deep trough here across the and at central eastern parts of the states on both the ECMWF and the GFS. They differ a little bit in the exact positioning of that trough, but they're both indicating that it's staying pretty cool really. Anyway, I think we'll lose the worst of the severest of the cold air over the next week to 10 days. Although the trough is in there through many east parts of the state, we are going, or they are going to run out really of cold air to tap into. So I don't think it'll be as cold next week as it has been. Nevertheless, it's going to be one of the coldest Novembers on record for them, most definitely. Now as we move through into the Atlantic, the cold air is pulling out and then enhancing the jet stream. That creates this deep trough out to the west of the country, and they've both got that. The ECMWF and the GFS both have that. But the trough is digging southwards and eastwards, so that's quite interesting. The trough is trying to undercut this ridge that's setting up, or is set up over Scandinavia and backing into western parts of Russia. Both the GFS and the ECMWF disagree on how strong that ridge is going to be, but they do agree that there is going to be a ridge sort of in that vicinity to the northeast, and it's been an omnipresent feature really through most of November. I would suspect it's probably tied in with the very rapid increase in snow cover that we had over Russia through the course of the autumn, particularly through October. We had a very rapid build-up of snow cover. I would suspect this constant trend to try and build heights up around Scandinavia back into Western Russia is probably down, partly at least, to what happened across Russia in October. But anyway, they've both got this area of the burnout heights up to the northeast. They're both trying to undercut this trough down to the southwest of the country underneath the ridge. Now things just aren't set up quite right for that to happen, so what we need is for this trough to start pushing through the Mediterranean, something like that, and then this next trough, which is delivering very cold air down into central parts of Russia, we need that to back westwards as well. So in the end we get a pincer movement with these two troughs running through the Med, and that would allow this ridge then to build through something like that stretched out from Scandinavia through in towards Greenland, and if that happened, we would start to properly open the floodgates to cold air coming in from the east and the northeast. It isn't that far away from a cold pattern, this, so it remains very interesting. It remains something that we've got to keep a close watch on, because this really isn't far from setting up a cold pattern, but things just not quite align right. But it's very, very different to the sort of pattern we had this time last year, when you remember the Atlantic was blasting through, and we had a very strong jet stream blasting right through Europe in towards Russia. It's a very different pattern to what we had last year, despite the fact that in the past week America has been shivering, and they've had the sort of pattern that we had last winter. For the Atlantic and Europe, it is a different pattern, and we've got to keep an eye on how this is progressing. Have a look at the temperature and precipitation ensembles from the GFS model. Temperatures first of all, the red line is the 30-year temperature average, and we're going to be above average for the next few days. Actually going really quite mild on Saturday. Temperature could be up to 14 degrees. But after that, temperatures will slide back down again. And although this next few days is above average, of course it's under sort of anticyclonic conditions, so it's quite slack, so it isn't as cold. It is colder than that would suggest. It isn't as mild as you would think looking at that, but it does get quite mild as we get through to Saturday. But after that, the temperatures slide down and just hover around the 30-year average, really, sometimes going above average, sometimes going a little bit below average. Certainly no sign of a big freeze coming up in the next 7 to 10 days on that ensemble. Nothing there at all to suggest really cold weather in the coming week to 10 days. But after that, of course, with high pressure over Scandinavia, we have got to keep an eye on where it's all going. Rainfall is coming back as well. We've had a few drier days as we get through into the weekend and through next week. The rainfall spikes are returning, so temperatures dropping a little bit next week. It'll be rather chilly, and there will be rain coming through at times. The temperature anomaly for the 20th to the 28th of November is coming out a little bit milder than average near north of Scotland and Ireland, a little bit warmer than average for England and Wales. It's generally mildest in central western parts of Europe. It's coldest in the east, and that's with that cold trough, of course, there that I was talking about, starting to deliver that cold air down into some central western parts of Russia. So the reason that these cold anomalies are setting up here across central western Russia is that the cold trough is starting to push that colder air through. We need that to back further westwards, of course, into Europe to get some cold weather. The temperature anomaly for the United States shows that things are moderating. It's going to be another colder than average week, particularly in the east and the northeast from the 20th to the 28th, but not as severely cold as it has been. So as I say, despite the fact that the trough is still through there in central east parts of the states, we're just losing the cold air really around that trough. We are losing the supply of the cold, but there could be another cold push coming through there later on. Have to watch what's happening there, but overall things moderating a little bit over in the States for the next week or so. The precipitation anomaly shows that we're going to be a little bit drier than average in the north, a little bit wetter average down in the south, but overall I think it's probably turning more unsettled actually as we go through next week. A lot of this is being skewered by the coming few days, I would suspect. Here is the generic GFS for the middle of next week, Wednesday. You can see what I'm talking about. Really, you've got the ridge there up to the northeast, but it's quite weak at that stage. But more low pressures are gathering out in the Atlantic, trying to throw bands of rain through across the country. As we move through into Thursday, another batch of rain is coming through. Not deep areas of low pressure, because we've got this ridge here up to the northeast, so that's sort of blocking things off a little bit, but enough to bring bands of rain through really across the country through next week. And then things get a little bit more unsettled as we go through to that stage of next week. This area of low pressure diving southwards, that's quite interesting. There's the area of low pressure just there in the central part of the Atlantic. You'll think that's going to race in, but actually as we get through to Friday the 28th of November, that low pressure is beginning to dive southwards, and that's just telling us that the ridge there in the northeast is having an effect. It's starting to push these areas of low pressure southwards with the jet stream. So we get through to day 10, and this is how it looks with the high pressures reaching through Scandinavia. It backs off in towards western parts of Russia as well. The low pressure is down to the southwest, and there's the sort of undercut that I was talking about. The low pressure is trying to undercut this ridge of high pressure, but things just aren't aligned quite right for that to happen. This high pressure needs to be further north and west, sort of centred over Scandinavia and backing in towards Greenland, really, to get that low pressure to push through. But it certainly isn't far from that happening. If we have a look at the ECMWF, again, middle of next week, we've got low pressures coming in off the Atlantic, coming up against this ridge up to the northeast. So it's a proper battle going on, and that is interesting for us meteorologists. Whenever we have a battle in the atmosphere taking place, it's very interesting. It doesn't necessarily produce interesting weather, so it's going to be cloudy and damp, really, with bands of rain coming in off the Atlantic. But the synoptic pattern is certainly one that is interesting me. As we move through to a week's time, Thursday the 27th, again, Mesmer Ridge through Scandinavia, the low pressure system's out in the Atlantic, and it goes for that diving south sort of scenario with that low pressure. So there it is again on Thursday out in the Atlantic. As we go through to Friday next week, that low pressure is diving south towards the Bay of Biscay. Again, it's all being caused by this ridge up over Scandinavia, pushing the low pressure system southeastwards down into towards Spain and Portugal and the Bay of Biscay. Anyway, whenever you see that happening on a synoptic chart, it shows that things are not running normally in the atmosphere. The normal flow is the one that we had last winter, although it's a very extreme version of it, but normal flow is west to east through the Atlantic into Europe. When you get these areas of low pressure pushing down that way, northwest to southeast, it is an indication that the blocking over Scandinavia in this case is really having an impact on the overall weather system. As we move through to day 10, Sunday the 30th of November, again the battle is still going on, isn't it? So we've got the ridge there over Scandinavia, we've got the low pressures out in the Atlantic, and sort of it's a stalemate between the two. Eventually one of these systems is going to win out. If the Atlantic wins out, we'll eventually blast this ridge away and we'll set up a proper westerly flow. If the ridge wins out, eventually we should start turning it colder. Things should set up so that we bring cold air down into Europe and then start to back it westwards. At this stage it's still relatively warm, really. If you follow the isobars back, despite all of this blocking up to the northeast, the isobars, the wind flow is from a southeasterly, southerly type direction, pulling the air up from the Mediterranean. So it's still relatively mild away from northern Scandinavia and Russia anyway, even at this point. Finally, just for GM, this is very nasty for day 10, Sunday the 30th, a deep Atlantic storm blasting in across the country, but the GM does have a tendency to overdo areas of low pressure, so I would discount that at this stage. The ridge across Scandinavia is much, much further back, and the Atlantic is much more influential. But just an indication there that there is the possibility of some sort of wind event developing as we get through to the very end of the month. But as I say, the GM has a tendency really to overdo low pressure system, particularly in its latter stages, so I won't worry about that too much. Overall, the theme of this video is, well, let battle commence. It's still going on. We've had it through most of November. It's going to continue to the end of the month with that ridge to the northeast, the trough to the west. They are fighting it out. They're trying to see which is going to get the ascendancy, which is going to take control. Eventually, one of them will, I would suspect. We can't, I would assume, keep this battle going right through the winter, so sooner or later one of these belts of pressure are going to win out, and whichever one does win out could in fact determine our fate this winter, whether it's a cold winter or a mild winter. So very interesting times. That's it for now. I'll be doing JMA Friday tomorrow, looking at the month ahead. Maybe this battle will become a little bit clearer with the Japanese model, but that's all for now, and thanks for watching.